You are listening to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all the latest news, Overwatch League results, and mishaps in Overwatch. Here are your hosts, Totemly Drunk and Edinar.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things Overwatch. I am your host, Totally Drunk, and tonight on episode 213, we are going to keep you up to date in regards to the latest news around Overwatch, its competitive scene, and so much more. So before we get into the news and introduce you to my co-host, let me just quickly take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out with us tonight on Twitch on an unusual time slot for this. That is entirely on me. I hard crashed after I ate yesterday, and honestly, my sleep cycle is all over the damn place. So, sticking to a schedule, kind of difficult right now. But more on my struggles later. But anyways, I do want to thank all of our repeat listeners out there as well. So joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host Edinar. And Ed, it's been a little bit of time since we've sat down and talked Overwatch. Obviously, a lot of stuff going on outside of the pandemic and everything. We thought it was best to just focus our attention elsewhere while other people were doing their thing. And honestly, it's been kind of like quiet in regards to Overwatch news, even in that week and even leading up to this week. But we do have some things that happened within the game. Some like experimental changes in regards to balance updates. And what I like about this is we actually have more of like an expansion of reasonings behind what they're trying to do in regards to the character design, which is something that we haven't really quite gotten as of yet. So I'm actually really excited to dive into a little bit of that. But looking back at the weeks that were, how have these past 2 weeks been treating you?
It's been up and down. I've had good time this past 2 weeks, but I've also had really bad times. With everything going on in the world right now, being a complete another shit show, and people fighting for stuff that they shouldn't have to fight for. But I guess some people just. I'm not getting into that. I'm not going to get into how stupid Trump is. But gaming wise, it's been fun. I actually got my external hard drive, so I can start having more games on my computer. So, like after later tonight, me, you, and Spider are going to be playing Sea of Thieves. And none of us have played the game before.
I have no idea what to expect. All I know is
I don't know.
we're pirates.
We're pirates. And everything I've heard about it is like I've actually had some other Overwatch podcasters reach out to me and be like, Ed, this game was made for you. I'm like, okay, fair enough. So I got the Xbox Pass and I got that, downloaded Ori, have not started playing Ori yet.
Did you download Slay the Spire yet?
I have not. That is on my list of things to do. Like I'm literally just downloading whatever the hell I
Right.
can. So like I'm downloading a bunch of games from Origin and stuff like that. So Steam, another one. Now that I have this, I'm a little worried about possible overdoing it on Steam. Just a little.
Well, that's why you play the other stuff.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's been pretty good. How's your past 2 weeks been?
Outside of my sleep schedule being all over the place, it's actually been pretty good. There was that week where I was supposed to be in Vegas for AEW to Double or Nothing, but obviously with the pandemic and everything, that didn't happen. So watching that show was really, really bittersweet, and it's also just knowing the fact that I should have been seeing my brother Slambo that week, and that didn't happen. So I am once things start to calm down a bit, I still am planning a West Coast trip, whether it's, straight out to Vegas or to Cali. Obviously, it won't be for BlizzCon since, as we talked about on our last episode, BlizzCon 2020 is not happening due to everything going on. But gaming-wise, it's been a lot of mixture of, Battlegrounds, playing quite a bit of Slay the Spire on the Xbox Game Pass, having a ton of fun with that. I've been doing some crafting, doing, perler bead art for Pokemon, which has been kind of therapeutic with everything going on, so it's been a nice escape in that regard. I don't know if you saw on my Twitter, I made an Alolan Vulpix for Pasha, and that thing took me 3 hours. That thing was kind of a pain in the butt because I didn't have a pattern on hand, and I was just using a picture for reference. So a lot harder to, deal with fixing mistakes via picture as opposed to an actual pattern.
I'm just picturing now Totem, straight up, I'm going to be knitting over here in the corner, or crocheting over in the corner, at next year's BlizzCon. We go to Con Before the Storm, we're all doing a meet and greet, and Totem's in the corner crocheting.
Yes.
I know that's not going to happen, but you know what? It's just the image that's going through my mind.
Okay,
right now.
so to dispel that, Ed, the whole bead art is more of a kid thing. Crocheting is more 70-year-old. There you go. But anyways,
how about that?
let's talk some Overwatch, because that's what we're here to talk about. We're not here to talk about my beat art. But anyway, so not that long ago, and I'm gonna say not that, it was 2 weeks ago, guys, at this point. On June 2nd, we saw a new experimental card. That was focusing more on these balance changes. And I will mention this experimental card is already done with, but we do a follow-up to this. But basically, they were looking at Echo, Genji, Hanzo, and Moira. So for Echo, they lowered the focusing beam range, lowered that from 20 meters to 16 meters. Genji, they made the shuriken damage increase from 28 to 30, as well as reducing the secondary fire spread from 12 to 9. And I know there was also a quality of life change in regards to deflect, where you could cancel it manually, which was definitely something that was needed for sure. And they also changed the duration from 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds. Now, outside of that, Hanzo had his storm arrow damage increased from 60 to 70, and then Moira, who seems to be the new diva in regards to the fact that the dev team just can't figure out what the heck to do with her, or how to balance her in the first place. They basically increased her healing per second from 65 to 70, while also lowering her damage per second from 50 to 40. Now, what's different about this time is, well, for starters, all of this stuff didn't just get patched through immediately, like what we have kind of been accustomed to seeing here as of late. So instead, we actually got some insight from the developer team in regards to what results they saw specifically from Genji and Moira. So when it comes to these two heroes in particular, the balance pass that they were doing was trying to bring them more in line with heroes that they would consider to be their counterparts. So for Genji, we're talking more with the multiple burst damage heroes. And for Genji, they said that they are trying to find a stronger niche for Genji. The buff to deflect would push his strength towards dealing with hit scan heroes. And the shuriken changes look to improve Genji's close range damage and its consistency. So they mentioned that it does bring Genji closer to their goal of bringing him in line with the other mobile burst damage heroes, so expect all of that stuff to get patched through. But, Moira seems to be the odd one out yet again. They are trying to make it where Moira's damage is decreased, while also maintaining her overall power level by upping her heals per second. Now, really the big thing here, Ed, is the fact that when we talk about Moira and her damage obviously that's very powerful. But her kit as a whole is fairly easy to use for, the power level that it has. And actually reverted all of the changes that they made with this experimental card, and will continue to, reiterate on different Moira changes. So, looking at Moira specifically, do you really feel like it is her damage output that is being like the big drawback here for not being able to find that sweet spot with her kit here?
Well, so what they did is they actually painted themselves into a corner at this point. So by that I mean is you have to damage to get more healing out of Moira. It's just the way it works. More damage you do, and more P you got. Like, that's just how it is. Until they get rid of that mechanic, I don't know if they can fully tune her well enough that the damage is not as big as it is. Because you're basically saying you have to do damage to be able to heal. But you don't want that damage to be so useless that she's just unplayable. And once you and they did change it a little. I remember. I don't exactly remember the specifics, but you have a baseline amount of healing, and that grows. But you can get more healing faster if you do damage. So they kind of painted themselves into a corner with that. I don't think it's the damage from her right click though that is truly the problem.
Right.
It's they need to concentrate on the orbs over her actual left and right click in my mind. But it is a delicate dance that it does, because one step too far in either direction and she goes from useful to useless, or vice versa, useful to crazy overpowered. So it's the same problem they had with Mercy for all times with her ultimate, and eventually they just had to get rid of the ultimate and completely gut the ultimate. This could be another one where they could probably do some sort of the only thing I can think of, and this could be taken as a little bit too strong, but I think if tweaked right, could be beneficial all around, is you only have one orb. And it heals.
So combining it like Coalescence.
And it heals and damages. But at a severely reduced rate. So you can throw that orb into the middle of a fight and damage them a little and heal your people a little, but nothing overly dramatic. Nothing that can switch a game almost. Kind of almost like Lucio's, maybe a tad bit stronger than Lucio's passive when he's on his healing aura and he's standing right there. Something along those lines. That could probably also be something that they look at, but they've definitely painted themselves into a corner because, one, you can still pump out a lot of damage and still pump out a lot of healing by doing more damage. Then you get more uptime on your heals, and then you're like, oh, I'll just throw out a damage orb at the enemy team while I heal my team with my left click, or you know what I mean? So it's so easy to play, just so easy to play. But yeah, they do need. I'm glad they're working on her.
Yeah, I don't know if combining the orbs would be the direction that they would go, primarily because it would feel a little too close to Coalescences. But if they do go that direction, maybe they would also make a tweak to Coalescence where maybe instead of doing both healing and damage as straight B, but maybe it will have a burst heal at the end of the duration based off of the amount of damage that you're doing, or vice versa. But you would obviously have to cap the value.
Yeah.
At a certain threshold. just to try to differentiate the two abilities just a little bit more.
Yeah, but here's the other thing: don't rule out just a complete rework.
Mm-hmm.
A la Symmetra style. Keep the same like core of it, but get rid of the rest of it.
Right.
And that could be something that they look at too, and it's not like it's unheard of because we've seen it done with Symmetra, we've seen it done with Torbjorn. Baguette has gotten, God knows how much she's gotten.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm definitely interested to see where they go with this one. Because they need to go somewhere with it. Now, when you look at it, you're like, well, she's not that powerful in the pro scene. That's not the issue. Like, the issue is not that she's super overpowered in the professional scene. It's everywhere else in the game that she's very much kind of oppressive.
Yeah, well, part of that's just because she is easier to pick up and have similar results. But anyways, let's take a look at some of the other issues that have kind of like been happening for a little bit of time. This is console specific in regards to communication. So there's been an ongoing problem both on PS4 as well as Xbox, where Game Chat has basically been having some issues. It's not been listed on the known issues, which I find to be really weird, because typically that stuff should be on there. But basically what happens is if your headset gets unplugged or your controller loses battery, you're unable to reconnect to game chat until that game is finished. After which you would have to hard reset your system. Now, these issues have also been present on PS4 for like a longer period of time. Like, I've heard reports of this happening for, almost a year at this point. And it's still not fixed. But players have noted that here recently, they have seen some more crippling lag in matches, which has led to more disconnects from their competitive matches. And, due to that, that has also led to an increase of bans from competitive play because of that. Going back a bit, I remember when they were updating the communication wheel. And, one of the things for me was, I was like, okay, but, like, how easy is this going to be to maintain on a console? And... if you can't speak in game chat, that definitely makes it a lot harder. Having some more editable, options in regards to information wheel can help, but obviously it's not going to even come remotely close to what you would be able to do just via the game chat. And for you to have to, like, play comp without that can definitely not be a great experience, but, on the other side, sometimes that might actually be for the best in some
might
cases.
actually be awesome because Overwatch is a fairly toxic game. Not as toxic as most. Look, don't get me wrong there. One thing I've actually come to realize with console is, and watching more people on console lately, is they communicate way better than people on PCs. There's a lot of times more of them on voice chat and doing stuff like that because most of the time they have to have a headset on to play. And so, like, a lot of times they just have voice chat on, so more people are talking and all that stuff. And if that's so, is what is doing it, or is it just the chat in the game? Like the emotes or the not emotes, but like the
it's a voice chat.
Voice chat. Okay. All right. Yeah. Then I can't believe that's not a known issue. That seems like a rather big one. Maybe they're just ignoring it until PlayStation 5 and Xbox whatever come out, and You ever just plugged into the controllers with your mics and headphones and all that stuff? Oh,
Maybe Xbox will keep going down in numbers in regards to like their naming philosophy on the next one. I don't know.
Xbox -2. What? That doesn't even make sense. Deal with it.
Exactly.
We're Microsoft.
Basically. But man, I definitely feel for the console players out there not being able to communicate. And you know, I haven't really played on the PS4 in such a long time that I can't tell you if I've experienced this myself. I know I haven't because I haven't really been playing on the PS4. But I'm sure this has popped its ugly head for some of our listeners out there. So shifting gears, let's see what's going on in regards to competitive Overwatch. Actually, a little bit of everything. So we got an update, air quote, from
Sure, we'll call it that.
from Trevor Houston and Dan McHugh, who are on the Path to Pro team, and basically they took to, you know, the competitive Overwatch Reddit, and you know, we got some interesting tidbits here. Now, I will preface this by saying that they didn't really answer any questions.
No, they didn't.
Which is,
They didn't
pains
answer
me.
anything, and they didn't give any new information.
Basically. And honestly, when I was reading this thread, and I was, you know, reading a couple other replies, I kept going to the replies that were given from some of the current Tier 2 players, or former. And honestly, like, I think the one that stood out the most to me was Carter's response to all of this, because he was just going in, just not holding back. But anyways, that's sidetracking. So basically, they were talking about prize pools since 2017. And there have been $14 million worth of player prizing when it comes to licensed tournaments outside of the Overwatch League. 10.4 million of which came directly from Blizzard. They were talking about Open Division and how they've seen registries of, you know, 20 to 30,000 global players each season. They were talking about, like, the amount of promotions that we have seen as well from the Path to Pro. So, you know, looking back at 2018 and 2019, we saw 200 players move up from the Path to Pro to the Overwatch League, and so far in 2020, that number has been, it's at about 60. They also talked about how the collegiate system has been growing and now includes 120 varsity programs across North America, which is great to see. They've also been giving out $2 million in regards to scholarships provided for the Overwatch players that have been pursuing university degrees as well. Now, you know, they're trying to be like, yeah, we know there's some issues.
Everyone, come take a look at how cool I am. Look at all this stuff I did.
Here's the gist of it. They basically are like, you know, we need to create framework to empower third-party tournament, you know, organizers to help contribute directly to, like, Path to Pro. They're talking about how they want to directly support qualified organizers with prizing so that they don't have to worry about that, or they don't have to crowdsource, like using like Matcherino and things like that. And you know, we did get an update on like the Gauntlet and how they're hopeful that they will still be able to host it at the end of the year. But you know, that the showdowns and all of that are definitely in like probably not happening. But you know, as if you're a tier 2 player, you don't want to hear like, "Oh yeah, look at all this money that we've given." When I'm sure some of them are like, "Yeah, but when were they paid?"
Yeah. Like, how about, you know, paying us?
Yeah.
Because we actually do stuff.
Yeah, and then there was this whole bit about how they want to, you know, support specific regions a bit more, right? It was like NA, Korea, EU, and then you got like poor Australia, Pacific, South America, just kind of like, hey, what about us? It's just like,
That's just smart business, though.
I
You
feel
know what I
like
mean?
either way, the problem is in the past those regions have tried to do, you know, third party tournaments and they've been shot down. So the Rays need to loosen the bit here in order for them to still, you know, continue, you know, as part of this ecosystem. Because if not, like, there's just not going to be anything there. And the way that they worded it, it kind of felt like there might not even be contenders in those specific regions, which would kind of suck too.
Yeah, honestly, I was reading this until they got to the 2020 contenders live events and future changes. I was like, oh shit, are they just getting rid of contenders as a whole and going to like third party tournaments and stuff like that that they sponsor and stuff, going that route. But yeah, no, it does sound like outside of NAEU, um, the, at least the official contenders, and Korea, um, official contenders is probably on the back burner. Maybe China. Maybe they keep Chinese contenders. That seems that one's gonna be
They were
kept.
playing it on the Overwatch League YouTube today.
Yes, they were. Our boy Labasco was on it. It was weird.
Yeah, and I will note, like, something that they were talking about kind of like went hand in hand with promoting talent, the broadcast, and everything. To their credit, and you know, we have seen a bit more involvement on that front, which has always been one of the biggest
Mhm.
issues within the current way that they're doing things. And you know, we the last episode was our thirsting for T2 episode. So you know, I mean, we're still gonna give Labasco crap about, you know, joining in on all of that fiasco. But
Mhm.
you know, I hate to see promotion having to fall on the actual community like that in order to stir up interest in T2. It needs to happen from the top down and not being like, you know, everyone that's working within the scene being like, hey, like, you know, we're actually playing. That stuff should have already been happening.
Yes, it
But
should.
we have seen more segments being involved in Watchpoint or during the Overwatch League broadcasts. We have seen more promoting going on, or just being broadcast on the actual Overwatch League channel, which is great to see. I honestly can't tell you what the viewership has been like, regardless of whatever Thurston has been going on or not. But you know, the more they promote it, obviously, the more eyes are going to be on the product, and hopefully over time, you know, the viewership will increase. We'll see more money being put into the players' pockets, and then they can just kind of go from there. But like as a system, like if we're talking about graduated talent, you know, it has been pretty successful so far since its implementation.
Yeah, I mean that has been very successful for them. You definitely were getting people. There are a lot of no-name players that made a name for themselves in Tier 2 that got picked up and have become fan favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know what? They're doing good on pumping in good new talent into the Overwatch League. I will give them that. Because I mean, a lot of these teams, if there was no contenders, would not be in the Overwatch League. Because what happens is a team like Runaway has, the what was the Vancouver Titans. Well, they went to the Overwatch League straight from contenders. So what does Runaway do? They went and get a whole new team, and then that team is now basically in the Overwatch League because the Titans got promoted. So it's like, yeah, this is all kind of working out well for them. As far as like promoting talent from within, coaching, I'm not sold on yet. I haven't seen really much of that, but it's hard to judge that in such a short span. you can judge a player rather quickly, but a coach needs time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this was a lot of this was a lot of politician talk
Yeah.
that we got from them. That's like, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this. We need to do better at this. We're gonna really work on this, so on and so forth, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. It's not about the how or the when. It's just like, yep, we know. We got
it.
We got some details we need to iron out, and yeah, we'll be back.
Yeah, and we're all over this. All right, cool. Thanks, guys.
But you know, I have to say, kudos to the T2 players out there who were just trashing this thread.
Oh,
Cause
my God.
honestly, they deserved it for all of that. But anyways, let's see what's going on within the Overwatch League. Actually, quite a bit has changed within the past 2 weeks. So we got, I don't know if I would say it's roster apocalypse size. At
not
this
yet.
point. But we did see a couple of staff changes. So the Hangzhou Spark went out and it picked up Pagian, who, you know, pretty big name in regards to the Overwatch League. We also saw the Washington Justice head coach John Galt retire. I believe he mentioned like he was going back to focus on education. Then we also saw the Toronto Defiant general manager Jay retiring from esports. So I have to say, like, obviously a lot of eyeballs right now are on Hangzhou and how they're going to be doing. You know, they added a new DPS, they got a new coach coming in. And, you know, APAC throughout the year has just been one giant... We don't know what's going on. Because it seems like the landscape changes on a week-to-week basis. Whereas, I mean, I guess in NA, that's usually... Honestly, it's only happening with Washington. I mean, Washington seems to be a revolving door at this point. Especially when considering the fact that they parted ways with Elivote. And here's the thing about this, Ed. I recall there was a Ryzen Rookies article or a video or something on the Overwatch League website that dropped after this news broke, where Elivote was released. And I just shook my head. I was like, oh my god.
Like, you knew he was getting released, you idiots.
Yeah, that was that was a big oof.
Not their shining moment.
No. And it's, you know, it's been a rough go, but that wasn't the only news out of Washington, as they also did sign Stitch to a long-term deal as well. So not only did they get Jondu, they also have Stitch long-term. So, you know, we'll see where they go from here. Obviously, Washington has been dealing with, honestly, like a very painstaking season. When you look at their win-loss record, where they rack up against the rest of the league, how they fared in the tournament play this season, not the best outlook so far.
No, it hasn't been the best, but you know, it is what it is. I think they're definitely for the better now, because I don't think there was a way that they were keeping Corey.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get rid of Corey, then it's like, okay, what do we do with our team?
Right.
And then they made the effort to be like, all right, well, we're gonna go full Korean. And you know what? They went big. Like, they just went big. They got Janu. They signed Stitch. You know, both great pickups from the from the Vancouver Titans shit show that occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the writing was on the wall for them to get rid of their coach too. The one that is weird is the releasing of Elivote. You wonder what was behind that.
You would also have to assume Lolfish has to be next.
Yeah, does he even have to be cut? He doesn't even play.
Yeah, I'm not sure, like, if there's any thing in the clause for like inactivity. I have no idea.
So, but it's gonna be interesting to see how they do. Now that they are not on like, hey, we've had them for 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see how they do. Now they've signed them to longer contracts, had about a month to play with them, and things should be going good. Hopefully.
Hopefully. I don't know. Just because they brought more people in doesn't mean that the stars are suddenly going to align. This could just be last season's Florida Mayhem earlier in the season when they, made the change and all that good stuff. But anyways, moving on, we have the Toronto Defiant, who, previously, we talked about how Numlocked was coming on to be a tank coach for this team. As it turns out, that was not correct. Yes, Numlocked is a member of the Toronto Defiant, but it's not as a tank coach, it is as a player. So what do you think, Ed? Like, is Beast riding the bench at this point? Do you think we'll see a split here? What are you feeling with this one?
I think they brought him in for some leadership, and to work with him. I don't think they're gonna bench Beast. They could, but I don't think they're gonna bench Beast. Bringing in Numlocked, who's been around the scene for literally forever, is a smart move, especially when it's basically a foregone conclusion that I think everyone is under the impression Surefour is gone. Or will be leaving sometime soon. So, you bring in that veteran leadership that way. This is it's not a game-changing move. It's that's fine.
Yeah,
good
but like
bench player.
if we're talking about like
good tank
mentorship potential, I feel like there is a lot to gain for a player like Beast with Numlocked here coming in.
Yes.
So while he may not be an official coach per se, that still doesn't mean that he's not going to help Beast every step of the way.
Oh yeah, no, he's definitely going to be taking him on as like a mentor-mentee type of thing. That I think is a foregone conclusion. So, it's just a matter of who will actually be playing.
Outside of that, we also saw another retiree in Dallas Fuel DPS Zachary. I know a lot of people who completely forgot that Zach was still on this roster because he wasn't even playing. And that was another player who wanted to pursue Valorant. And obviously he wasn't going to see the stage at this point, or really just online play, realistically, especially with how well we've seen Decay and Doha performing here as of late. So not too much of a surprise there, but we also saw Dallas acquire main support Paintbrush from the Los Angeles Gladiators. Now, Ed, going back, you and I constantly talk about more so like the inconsistency when it comes to the lines, more so when it comes to the support for the Dallas Fuel. How are you feeling about this signing? Like, is Closer going to take a step back? Because really, Paintbrush hasn't really made, like, the biggest splash so far within the Overwatch League.
No, he hasn't, but I think that they feel he's a better fit for the team. And that's why they're going to go with him. I think that Closure is probably going to be benched in favor of Paintbrush. Yeah, because God, I wonder what they gave up for Paintbrush. Just willingness to take on his salary. I don't know, but I think Paintbrush is probably as good, if not slightly better than Closure. And I cannot remember for the life of me in TF2. Did Paintbrush and Crimzo play together? I want to say they did.
Let me pull up Wikipedia.
Because it could also be like a familiarity type of thing with
Well,
Crimzo
Paintbrush
there
was
now.
on Mayhem Academy and Revival. So no.
So no. Okay.
Crimzo was Envy.
Well, then never mind. Let's throw that one out the window. But yeah, I can't see them. Like their two weakest positions were probably main support and flex tank on Dallas, and then you go and pick up a new main support. You're not gonna just not play them. I don't think so. So yeah, I fully expect Paintbrush to be out there.
All right. Well, I saved the best one for
The big
last,
Mhm.
for obvious reasons. Partially because I'm biased. The other reason because it honestly is the biggest sign out of all of these, and that is that the New York Excelsior have added another DPS player for their rotation by picking up former Vancouver Titans projectile specialist Haxel. Oh man,
Right?
you know, like, this is an interesting
Did not
one.
see this move coming.
You know, it seems like New York keeps putting themselves in this position where they have all of these DPS. And then you gotta figure out what the hell to do with it. So they got SPB, they got Libero, they got Nene, they got Who Are You, now they have Haxel. They're at 5 DPS. And I'm just gonna throw my hands up. I don't know what's gonna happen here. I would imagine this impacts Who Are You more than anyone, just based off of the heroes that we have seen him playing here as of late. But I don't know what like the new primary duo is going to be at this point, or if it's going to be like another thing like we saw with the Shock, where we saw like map archetype specialists, where, you know, maybe you run, you know, 2 DPS on, you know, your, you know, control points, 2 DPS on your, you know, 2 CP, things like that. But every time, you know, New York, they go out, they get a big sign in, and I'm waiting to see what happens here. Because they have all of the pieces, but New York has, you know, every time they get close to the top of the mountain, they just don't deliver when it matters most. And will Haxel be the piece to, like, glue them all together? I have no idea, but I'm excited that he found a home. Obviously, with the fragments of Runaway being kind of, like, scattered everywhere, of course I'm going to be happy that he went to one of the better teams out there and not, say, you know, the Washington Justice. But, you know, it gives me a reason to still wear my Haxel jersey, so I appreciate it.
I mean, right now you have, if they were still running Dive with Genji Tracer, greatest DPS lineup in history, with him and SBB. Now watch, everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, Who Are You? Ooh, Haxel," and they're gonna be like, "We're running SBB Libero." But yeah, no, it's. I mean, this is a huge signing. This is they haven't had. I think they need that one DPS player who's always in there, like that once, and then you can plug in other people for different maps. And I think Haxel is that. Let's keep him in there every map type of thing.
Well, Who Are You was kind of in that role. I gotta pull up the stats to see if he was in every map, but I know he was in the vast majority so far.
Okay.
But either way, I would say Haxel is going to be an upgrade over Who Are You at this point, despite how well Who Are You has actually looked this season. But I would imagine, like, if we're talking just pure flexibility, obviously Libero is probably going to be that secondary DPS. So it's just a matter of, do they go all in on Haxel? And I think they do. I mean, we've seen the man run Genji when Genji's not supposed to be viable, and he's just been an absolute menace, so...
He's doing something right.
I'm anxiously awaiting the results of this one. So who knows? Like maybe the landscape for that summer showdown is going to be a little bit different in NA, especially when consider we got Sparkle debuting this weekend, which I'm excited to see. But that's another player. It's like okay, like your best heroes aren't really getting played. So let's see what else you got.
Right? Just like, okay, show me what you got.
Basically. And, speaking of the Summer Showdown, we did get news that this is the next, tournament that is going on, which kicks off on June 13th, and this will last until mid-July. So this tournament is going to share the same model that we saw from the May Melee, with all 20 Overwatch League teams participating. You got two brackets. You got the APAC side. You also have the North America side. And, obviously, just like the May Melee, the first place teams will earn, $50,000 USD, per region. We'll also have, 3 bonus wins attributed to the overall standings. And for those that did not see the end results of the May Melee, which I don't know why you haven't at this point. It's June. We had the San Francisco Shock and the Shanghai Dragons coming out ahead in that one. Now, we do have some other news that kind of like coincides with how they're doing things within the Summer Showdown, but that also kind of like leads into our main discussion. But before we get into that, Ed, are you happy to see them continuing to push this tournament format at this point, knowing that maybe this is going to mean that this is going to become a more consistent thing moving forward here?
Yes, now that there's no like homestands or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, no, this is totally fine. This is A-okay with me. It even makes sense to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm happy to see this return. It really works out well. I'm interested to see how teams come back from the break and go into this new format. Because yeah, it's just it's more interesting to watch if there's no homestands, and that's the big thing. It's if there's no homestands.
Yeah, and to that point too, like the games that have teams that we normally wouldn't go out of our way to watch, it at least makes the matches from these lower seeds or like lower placements more meaningful at the end of the day too. So like if we see someone have a good run, like a dark horse team out there, to be able to basically make up 3 wins from the regular season is obviously a huge deal, and that could really swing things in regards to any sort of season that we would see coming into play at a later date.
Yeah, the 3 wins adds a whole new element of what the heck is going on here. So we'll see. It's kind of like we just went back to, all right, we have stages now. Like, here are your stages.
Yeah.
Like to some degree, like kind of like a broken up type of format. But you know what? I think this is good. This was overall very good changes that they announced.
Right on. But let's address the elephant in the room. And that is that we have another change, Ed.
We do.
To something that has changed. And changed.
And changed.
And changed like another 6 times. To the point now where they're like, you know what? We're washing our hands with this. We're calling it. We're pulling it back. And I'm talking about hero pools, guys. Hero pools in competitive play are gone. Removed immediately. And it doesn't seem like they're coming back. Now, I will note they did mention that the introduction of the experimental card and the increased number of hero balance updates has helped them work towards a more healthy change in meta in competitive play without the need to disable heroes. Obviously, like, when we saw the experimental card happen, we were really hoping that was the goal. Like, you know, maybe if they just update the game frequently, balance will be in a better state, then we won't need this. And, you know, the dev team feels strong enough that the game is balanced, and there's no need for it at this point, after they scaled it back, after they made it, okay, this is only going to happen at Grandmaster and above. And you know what? And, you know, I have to say, thank God. Because, for one, nothing irked me more than having to come onto the podcast, like, every 1 to 3 weeks and being like, oh yeah, you know that system? Oh, it's different now. And it just kept happening. And it was worse when it was changing on a week-to-week basis, where they're like, oh yeah, you know, we're only going to ban, you know, 2-2-2. Or like 2-1-1. And then they're like, okay, we're gonna ban, you know, 3 healers this week. Okay, no, we're gonna do all the projectile DPS. No, okay, now we're gonna do 3 tanks. And just like, make up your mind. And seems like the sweet spot is just to not have it at all. So this is a welcome change, and I know, like, at this point it wouldn't affect us because we'd already kind of gotten to that point. But I'm just happy that we could finally sit here and put this behind us from, like, a player perspective. So I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ecstatic that it happened because we don't have to deal with it anymore, which is nice. So yeah, it's definitely a win-win for us. I don't think it was that big of a deal that it was actually in the game because it was affecting so few people. Like, let's be real, it was not affecting really anyone. It was just more of an annoyance.
It was primarily just the high-end players who are the minority.
Top 500, top 1,000 players in the game, who half of them are actual pro players anyway, who deal with it on a weekly basis, and still now will be dealing it on a bi-weekly basis. Like, so yeah, they still have to do all that. But yeah, I mean, this is nice. It's nice we don't have to report on it every, like, that was like a weekly topic for us for like 2 months. Was hero pools.
Yeah, who's not playable this week? Have at it.
Oh, we're gonna have a cat draw who's not playable for some fucking reason. But yeah, no, it's definitely been a shit show in regards to hero pool. I'm still for hero pools. Don't get me wrong. I still like hero pools. It's a shit show.
Yeah. But anyways, this also does impact the Overwatch League. That's not to say that hero pools are gone from the Overwatch League. That's not what I'm saying, guys. But basically, the way that they're going to do it is, starting this week, the week of June 13th, the Overwatch League will use a single hero pool for the first 2 weeks of a tournament cycle. So, you know, they won't be used at all for the week before each tournament or during bracket play. But basically, you know, as we mentioned, like, this has been essentially a 3-month experiment since the beginning of March. And we've seen a multitude of changes. And, you know, it's just... At this point, you know, the balance is definitely in a better spot now than where it was, you know, back at early March at this point, or whenever they, like, first announced it. I will say, though, the terminology that they use talking about hero pools within the Overwatch League is very confusing, though. When they talk about, okay, they're not going to be active here, and then they're talking about tournaments, and then they're talking about bracket play. Like, that's very confusing to people, like, when you're just reading it. So it's basically like, okay, it's 2 weeks on, 1 off, and then when we get to the Summer Showdown, So like we're talking like round of 16, like quarterfinals, like shit like that. Then it's not happening. Like, is that right? Like,
Something like that.
I'm assuming that's the case. So like during the tournament aspect of it, or during playoffs, hero pools are not a thing. But during the qualifiers, that they should have just said it like this: qualifiers, hero pools. Tournament, no hero pool. Like, just be done with it, rather than using all these terms that just will baffle people. But basically, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. That's essentially what it is.
Nah.
I think.
I'm 99% sure that's actually the case. Now, obviously, with how much the landscape has kind of changed within the Overwatch League, the amount of pressure that players have been under, whether it was COVID related or not, this does impact, the players. I feel like it impacts like the coaches a lot more, because like coach value was getting extremely hard to like try to figure out, and it just put an immense amount of pressure on the coaching staff trying to figure out in a very short amount of time what would be considered to be like the ideal composition to run. And that was happening basically on a week-to-week basis. So you gotta feel as if like this weight has been, it's still there. It's just not as apparent now as opposed to what it had been since, early March at this point.
Yeah, I fully expect, like, would anybody be shocked if we got a different like we got another like post in a week clarifying all of this? Would you be shocked?
Probably not, just based off of how they phrased it.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem feasible. So yeah, it's a shit show. But it's going in the right direction.
Yeah, so I know for like a friend out there, like Drunken Monk, I'm sure he's through the moon, because I know he was getting frustrated, because I know he competes in tournaments. I don't know if it's with Open Division or just community run stuff that we're using, hero pools and all that. But he was getting frustrated knowing that essentially half the time, because he's a hit scan player, I will preface this, he was not able to practice the hero that he plays, which is primarily Widowmaker. And he was just getting to the point now, he's just like, well, what am I supposed to do this week? Like, do I just practice Ashe? Like, do I practice Hanzo? Like, what do I do? So at this point, like, he can just stick to what he needs to practice for the tournaments, as opposed to just kind of getting dragged in multiple different directions. And, for the coaches, it does mean that they can... I'm sure, like, you're still going to be seeing discussions about, okay, what's going to be the ideal meta at any given point in time. Obviously, that's still going to be there, but you're not going to be bum rushing to what you are hoping is the best result for the end result at this point. So I'm really hoping at this point we are going to be seeing a little bit more cleanliness in regards to the games. But I am still hoping at this point that we will continue to see, a myriad of different compositions being ran, as opposed to just seeing like one or two different alterations at this point.
Yeah, I think that's everyone's hope, is they don't want to see the same thing over and over and over. Nobody wants the goats again. So hopefully this kind of helps with some of that. Because like what was happening is we had all these matches, but everyone was still just running mirror comps essentially the whole time. Right. And maybe with that extra week, they will have, extra time to, maybe not like be like, okay, we're going to have to do this. So.
right on. But anyways, outside of that, it's basically been the bulk of what has been going on. We'll see. You know how the teams are gonna look when they get back after this Melee break this weekend. We'll see whether or not Sparkle lives up to the absurd amount of hype behind him. So I'm just excited to see him play, on the team at this point, just because, like, we've been like, okay, like, it's going to be at the halfway point before he comes on. Let's see if they're going to be at their full potential at this point, or if Paris was doomed all along. I don't know.
Oh, it's going to be so nice to see frickin' Sparkle actually playing.
Yeah, and then there's, like, other storylines, like whether or not the Dynasty will be able to build off of that momentum after the run that they had in the Melee, which was very surprising, since, they did make it pretty deep into the tournament. And, like, Mayhem have a match against the Field this weekend, which is going to be pretty spicy, too.
Yes, it will.
Knowing how well they've looked here, let's see if they can measure up to the DPS duo of Doha and Decay. That should be a fun one.
Yeah, that should be a fun one. Yeah. That Decay, is everything that I had hoped for. He's so good. But they, like, I forgot where I heard it, but they were basically talking about how it was all, like, they rely too much on Decay, and that is what's killing them right now. Like, why they won't be a top-notch team is because they're too Decay focused, which I get. But yeah, there are going to be some spicy matches this weekend. I am looking forward to Sparkle's debut the most.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anyone's going to be like, no, you're wrong.
Even though it's against Boston.
Yeah, it's against Boston, but who really cares?
Right.
So
anyways, let's go ahead, Ed, and let's close out the show, because we gotta eat in between recordings here.
Yes, we do.
So if you guys want to help us out, the best thing to do is to head on over to iTunes, right, and leave us a review. Let us know how we are doing. We are always looking for ways to improve the show. Now, we do have a new review here that was sent via iTunes, which was a 5-star review from... I'm gonna use the name that he used in his actual review, and that's Justin, rather than... I don't even know how to pronounce that, because there's so many I's in your name. I don't know if it's Doy Boy? Or... But anyways, he says, hello, I'm quite new to the podcast, but I really enjoy Overwatch, and I think I found the perfect podcast for that. You two are so energetic and positive, and it makes me wish your episodes lasted forever. Keep up the great work. Well, Justin, apologies. This episode does not last forever. Actually, it only lasts a little bit over an hour. So that's a pretty wide differential there. But if you just started, you're already kind of at a loss, because we have shortened the podcast format a little bit. We used to run like 2 hours every week. Now it's more like an hour and a half if we're on a good week. So if you want to listen to, you can listen almost forever. Just start at episode like 100 and then just zoom through all that good stuff.
Yeah, they get real long.
Yeah, definitely. Some go a little bit off the rails more than others, but that's what we're here for.
I blame myself.
Yeah, you're trying to blame me on
Just,
that.
let's be real here. I blame myself.
But we appreciate the kind words, and always good to see new reviews popping up, regardless of what platform they are on, so thank you so much for that. If you are looking to support the podcast and the network, consider checking out our Patreon page, where we have tiers starting at just $1 a month. So you can find more info on Patreon at patreon.com/OWL Network, where you too could join the likes of our master and above patrons, Daniel, Owl, Kesha, Agent Life, and 044 in helping our network grow. Not only does it help, in regards to podcast fees for like the provider. It also helps keep Ramses out of the darkness. All that good stuff. But anyways, Ed, we have a multitude of ways how our listeners can get a hold of us. So why don't you go ahead and let them know how they can do that?
All right, so you can reach us through email at hndoverwatch@gmail.com. We are on Twitter, and that's at @hndoverwatch. We do have a website, and that is owlnshow.com. We are on YouTube at youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. You can come join us on our Discord at discord.me/OWLNshow. We do stream live on Twitch, twitch.tv/OWLNshow. We are a Twitch affiliate, so help support the show by subscribing to our channel and earn our network emoticon. Our podcast network does stream pretty regularly, so Mondays at 6 p.m. Pacific, we have Overwatch League Network. On Tuesdays, we're back next Tuesday, since Overwatch League is back with OWL by the Numbers, is Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific. Heroes Never Died, this show airs Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, and then our Hearthstone Battlegrounds podcast is Tavern Tales, airs Thursdays at 5 p.m. Pacific over at twitch.tv/TavernTalesHS. You can contact me personally, Edinar, on Twitter at Edinar83, and on Twitch at twitch.tv/Edinar. Totem, where can they find you?
Well, I'm also on Twitter. That would be at TotemlyDrunkCTR. And when I'm streaming on Twitch, that would be at twitch.tv/totemlydrunk. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight on a special Thursday evening episode of Heroes Never Die. This has been episode number 213. I've been your host, Totally Drunk, joined, as always, by my co-host, Edinar, and we'll see you guys back on Wednesday. Take care, and have a good night.
Peace out.